voted, and I don't know if I told you this, but my senior superlative in high school was most likely to be on SNL. So if that gives you any clue. So, okay, marketing your podcast. So you've learned everything. You know everything about podcasts now. So you have no excuse except you don't know how to market it, right? Okay, the first thing that you should probably do, if you interview somebody, I'm looking at notes, by the way, if you think I'm looking off into it's just better for me and my type anus. So you want to leverage your people. And what the first one is, if you interview somebody, you want to leverage who they know. So if you interview, you want to offer them social media graphics, any potential copywriting that you could use to help introduce, like if they're nervous about what they're going to be talking about, you can help them with that. You want to also make sure that they know when to post and when to send friendly reminders. Like, hey, you might want to post this, a week before and then 2 weeks before. So that's kind of using that person to help you as, kind of like a micro influencer or a major influencer, depending on whoever it is that you're interviewing. The second part of leveraging your peeps is if you didn't have an interview, if it was just you on there and it was just about yourself, you want to ask your friends to share. I know it sounds like a pain in the butt. I know you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to ask my friends to do one more thing, but I can guarantee you, and I know Jim and I do this a lot too, we will tag our friends because we know they're super supportive, or we'll send them an email, or we'll drop it into Facebook Messenger. Hey, would you share this for me? We always want to help out our friends. We want to be supportive. And that's like a super important thing to ask people to do. And you can switch it up too. If you feel like one podcast you asked about these 5 people, maybe the next one ask the other 5, just kind of rotate it. I can guarantee you it does work and it helps, but don't be afraid of asking. So don't be afraid to ask for the sale, if you will. So also too, if you are in business with somebody, let's say you're an attorney and you have a podcast and you're in business with another attorney, or let's say a psychologist that helps you with your business, ask them to share it too, especially if you're trying to build a business relationship. That's super helpful. Hey, would you mind taking a listen to this and sharing it for me? Don't be afraid to spread that out. Hey, I know we just met, but I've got this podcast. I'd love to hear your feedback on it. That's also a really good way to leverage people as well. So that's leveraging your peeps. And again, just a reminder, as we always do, this will be sent out for you. So you'll have all of these notes for you to kind of review along with the video. So there's that. Because I know those emails are long, but it'll be in there. So the second one, the one that's like my favorite thing to talk about, that I talk about all the time, is social media. So obviously that is the way to go nowadays with spreading any kind of word digitally, definitely social media. So I want to talk about the basics of social media first. Hi, bud. My stepson just got home with the dog. Sorry. So I want to talk about the basics of that real quick. The first is there's a few components on social media, and I'm going to just brush through them really quick. This is where you're going to get some free social media information, whether it's for podcasting or not. The first one is have a goal. You definitely want to have a goal. And whether that's, I want 5 subscribers in 1 month, I want, 25 downloads in 1 month, and we'll get to the analytics part in a second with Jim. Those are goals that you want to set for yourself. Or I want to have at least 3 podcasts done in 2 months. Whatever those goals are, set those out, because if you're reaching for a goal, you're going to be able to drive your content better. You're going to be able to help people understand, and you want to stay consistent. That's also about consistency with what you're doing too, so that you don't want to have one and drop off for 6 months and do another one. I know things happen, and I get that happens, but with social media, you kind of want to keep that flow going. So that's about having a goal, and that's with obviously any social media strategy that you have. The second one is building your strategy. Okay. So now for example, you say, I want 5 new subscribers in 1 month. Well, how am I going to get those subscribers? Okay. You want to tell people about it on your podcast, right? So that's part of your strategy. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast because that'll go into an RSS feed and they'll be able to get notified when you have a new podcast come out. So those are, subscribers. So, I want to talk about it. I need to send an email and I need to put it on social media. Bing, bang, boom. You got 3 ways that you want to get more subscribers. So that's just kind of a way that you're taking your goal and you're building it into your strategy. The third is create your content. Obviously, you're going to create your podcast, right? And then you're going to create social media graphics to go with that. And that's like we talked about, I think either last week or the week before. You can pull quotes from the graphic. You can pull pictures. And I'll talk about that in a second, that you're taking while you're doing the podcast. I know Jim's got a great visual component to his, but even just you two sitting there, or selfies of where you're at, or anything related to that, don't be afraid to share that and say, hey, don't forget, link back to my podcast. So it's not just about putting your podcast out there. It's about the hierarchy of how much content you can build from your one podcast. So that's how you want to create that. And you can use obviously Adobe Photoshop. If you're well versed with that, you can use Illustrator, anything, even all the way down to Canva. Don't be afraid to use Canva if any of you are familiar with that software. Just don't keep using the same layouts over and over again, because then we kind of know you're using Canva and then on that, okay? Because then we're gonna kind of make fun of you, but it's fine. The fourth one is scheduling your content. And Jim touched on this a little bit when you have a program like Lisbon, or is that, am I saying that right, Jim? Lisbon? Libsyn, thank you. Okay.
Liberated syndication.
Yes. So when you do that, you're batching and scheduling your content out, because he has his hit Saturday morning, 6 a.m. He's got that done. That's along with all the other content. Plan that out. You know, we'll get to that too. I know I keep saying we'll get to that in a second about when you should post. Hold that thought. So you can schedule your content out. And then the fifth one, and this is where I'm going to have Jim touch on, is once you've set your goals, you've built your strategy, you've created your content, you've scheduled it out, it's all been released, and you've done what you're supposed to do. Then at the end of the month or a month after, or however you kind of want to see where it's going, you want to measure how you did. And that's your analytics, or another thing is your metrics. Now, I'm going to keep it super basic about the things that you should monitor. You could literally for hours and rabbit hole after rabbit hole, go down with SEO, of how to get your podcast just right when it comes to that. And this is when we talked about keywords, key phrases, and stuff like that. But these things that I'm going to tell you right now are just the basic measurements to kind of get you started. The first one is your subscriptions. The second one is downloads. And when it comes to downloads, you want to pay attention to the ones that get the most traction, because it could be your title that they're attracted to. It could be the content that they're attracted to. And you'll get to know a lot about your audience too when you're doing that. And also too, with downloads, there's something called backlinks. And I know I'm going really fast over this. I know. There's something backlinks that you want to put in your descriptions as well. And if you're not familiar with backlinks, just Google that, because that's a whole shit show in itself about backlinks, but they do work. Don't be afraid of backlinks. And then of course, social sharing, that helps with your downloads as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jim so he can show you what those analytics kind of look like when you after you have your podcast out.
Yeah, hang on, we've got some chat here.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just checking. Okay. How do you know which part of the download they reacted to? That's a great question, Ernie. I don't know. It's not like the,
it's just the last part right before the backlinks part, Delaina. I didn't understand. I got a little lost there. Right
I know. And I sped through, I talk fast. Okay. So on the downloads, so when you are, you want to pay attention to how many times you're downloaded. You know, Jim will show you that too, I believe. When you're paying attention to, because when you're paying attention to your downloads, that gives you 3 key things. It could either be the title that they're attracted to. It could be the content that they're attracted to. And then it also tells you a lot about your audience. So in any strategy, you kind of want to get your personas, your customer avatar, and who's actually listening, so you can drive that content and build that content a little bit better toward who's listening to your stuff. But the backlinks, when you put anything in your descriptions or on your webpage or regarding your podcast, it's basically to a relevant source. So I apologize, I did kind of skip over that a little bit. So if the person that you are interviewing on Zoom, put their website, because the backlink will, that makes it look to, trying to skim over SEO. So I'm sure you probably understand SEO. So you want to create those backlinks so that people, to the search engines, you look relevant. And then also too, you want to, make sure that you're putting the people's handles and stuff like that too. That's considered a backlink. I know it's not a backlink, but when you put their social share too, like their Instagram hashtag or their Facebook page, that's also a backlink too. They do measure it that way as well. So did that answer your question?
It did. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Well, I am going to show you a couple of caveats here. My podcast is pretty much for my own entertainment, right? So this is not the kind of podcast that I'm working really hard to get the maximum number of downloads, because there's no financial benefit to me if 100 people see it or if 10,000 people see it. At the moment, it's really just my chance to interview interesting folks and put it out there. And generally, I think it's probably the interesting folks and their friends who are the ones actually listening. My I'm a little surprised by the statistics, and I'm going to switch right over here to show you that. But I wanted to kind of place the fact that a lot of what Delaina said, while absolutely accurate, doesn't really apply to me because I'm not trying to get people to watch it in a big way. It's really just a learning platform for me more than anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If I can do this right, and I'm going to pop over to the Libsyn statistics. So let me see. Can you see that? Okay, good. It's weird because
Yes, I can see it.
in your window, all you get's a little green box around it. You don't actually see it on the big screen. So let me slide it over here so I'm looking at you. Oop, my screen sharing is paused. Let's try that again. Oops, did I break it? May have broken
Yeah,
it.
like cut it in half.
Yeah, I broke it. I'm sorry. I'm going to reshare. I moved it from my one monitor to the other, and apparently when you do that, Zoom.
I'm always scared to do that, so now I know it doesn't work.
Yeah, don't do it. All right.
Okay.
There we go. How's that? All right, good. So what you're seeing here is the statistics panel of Libsyn's website. And again, there are many different kinds of distribution companies. Libsyn is one of many, and we sent you a link, many links in the last podcast backup to show you. My particular, move that over there. My particular dashboard statistic shows me this. I can see 10 of the 15 total episodes here, and right now they're sorted by title, I think. Yep. So I can show the date they were released, and we can see the very first introduction, how many total downloads there have been in all of time. And if we go to the second one here, you'll see the rest of them. And interestingly, the most popular episode was episode 13 with Phil Hoffman. There's a couple of reasons for that, I think. Phil was the last one I posted in 2019 before all this pandemic began, and I don't know if that has any effect on it. Phil also has a large network of people, and when I think when he promoted it, a lot of people said, "Oh, I'm going to listen." He works for public radio, and I have a feeling there's a lot of his people who are podcast listeners anyway. So you can see that if I sort by total. And I go back to episode 1 here. Oops, let's try it this way. There we go. I can see which podcasts were the most popular. And for the last 3 months, I can see how many downloads there have been. We can also look at this as this is kind of a graph of the last 3 months showing me when people downloaded. And so if you go to the spikes, I can see on February 26th, what happened then. Do you guys see that little pop-up window in front? Okay. Then we got 14 episodes that day. That probably was the day I said, "Happy birthday, Phil Hoffman," one of my last year's people. And so a bunch of people saw that and went and listened to it, apparently. This looks like the day, this is probably a Saturday morning when we dropped one. This looks like it was Christy. Yep, 3/28 was the release date. But the interesting thing is, and you guys may find this as well, when you drop a new episode, you get some people listening to that one followed by others as well. And remember, this is aggregating people who downloaded from Spotify, people downloaded from Stitcher, from iTunes. It actually, yeah, it aggregates all of them. But for some reason, I have to correct myself here. When I look at my stats, it shows me, let's see here, show. Yeah, it shows me my Spotify separately, and I don't know why that is. Anyway, I'll show you that in a sec if I can find it. Downloads per episode. Again, you can see how the totals of everybody that were downloaded, and you can see where in the world for the last 3 months they are located. I apparently have a listener in India and a couple in Germany and Romania. There's somebody in Romania listening to me as well. And I think these are family members in Australia here. So this shows the breakdown of the type of browser they're using, what people are listening to. So a lot of these are going to be mobile. In fact, it looks like I'd be willing to bet you that more than half are listened to on people's mobile devices. I don't know if that particular statistic is in here, and depending on what publisher software you use, like some of the ones we talked about last week, Podbean and the various other ones, you're going to have similar information, but it's going to be presented differently. Here it is. There's the Spotify one. For some reason, it breaks out Spotify separately from the other distribution channels. I don't know why Libsyn does that. Oh, hang on. What we got here? As of 2019, the main stats now include Spotify. This separate page will no longer update. Okay. Well, then it's not going to happen anymore after this, so we can ignore that now. Again, I don't know why it originally did that, but now the two are connected. There's also, I've got the information here. If I wanted to go premium, I could check out how my monetizing is being done. So if you sell an ad to somebody for your podcast and say, hey, if you want to be on my podcast, I'll drop in your little 20-second spot into my edit. This is not going to be able to track that, obviously. But when you get to the point like in YouTube, where YouTube provides the ads for you and you don't have to worry about it, you just upload the content and then YouTube adds the monetization and the advertising to it, that's where this would be. That's where you would find this. I'm not, as I say, I'm not trying to make any money doing my podcasting, so this isn't going to be relevant to me, but just know that it's possible. And if you have a hit show and people really start to listen, there's very much, there's a likelihood that you could generate some income through this one as well. I did want to go over here. I think I may have showed you this last week, but I want to show you just that I can see where all my podcasts are being pushed out to. I had to set each one of these up. LinkedIn one, SoundCloud, Spotify. As I told you last week, when I upload this, I put the media, the MP3 file in here, I put the photos in here, I put the description, and I type up all my explanations, and I hit go. And when I say release date, it's automatically distributed to all these places. So I don't have to try to go into each one and send it. That's, I think, why these kinds of distribution sources are so valuable. I think that's all I've got to show you on my stats and analytics. It's very interesting. After each show, I go in kind of the next day and take a look at how many people I was able to reach. And Delaina, I'm going to stop sharing here now. Delaina, do you want to talk a little bit about the, maybe a little more about how search engine optimization works and how you would use some of that SEO and other kinds of marketing to get your podcast increased within the subject matter that you're talking about?
Yeah, so we touched a little bit about SEO, and for those, we'll recap. That's again search engine optimization. And if you're not familiar with SEO, and if you are, you're going to hear me talk very basic about it. But for those of you who don't, it's basically the little spiders that crawl the internet and crawl web browsers to find your information. So websites have SEO built into it with keywords and key phrases, metadata, alt tags, title tags, all these big fancy words, right? It's going to blow your mind.
And they also, Delaina, sorry to jump in, but those little bots also read the content of your page as well as all the key and tags and stuff like that. They read the words that you've that the viewers on your page can also see.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so they can, it's front and back. They read the front and back of your website.
Right.
So, which is pretty cool. And it does it in a trillionth of a second, which is bananas. And of course, there's people at Google and Bing and Yahoo that are locked indoors, and they change the way their SEO is read on the daily. So nobody will really ever truly know, and get and this is so funny. And my husband is in finance. So I think it's funny because, I just want to get to the top page of Google. As a digital marketer, that's literally the worst worst thing to say to somebody, because that shouldn't be your goal. Your goal shouldn't be to get to the top of Google. That's just, it's not. The thing you should be measuring is your conversions. Are you converting, and are you converting to the right people? And are they buying your product or listening to your product, whatever it is that you're using your SEO for or your website? So that's the little SEO brief. But with podcasting, not only just in your descriptions and using keywords and key phrases, you want to put these in your social posts too. Because if you have a page devoted to your podcast, let's say it's best cookies ever. So that's your page, and that's your podcast. You talk about the best cookies in the whole wide world. So if you Google, now listen, there are 1,723 million different pages that you can either purchase, or software or websites that you can go on to purchase keywords, and they can tell you how many times it's been searched and all that. Don't do that right now. If this is over your head, when you type in Google and you type best cookie, and then you see the drop down where it says like ever and recipe, keto, gluten-free, that's the main thing that people are searching for. Those are keywords and key phrases you should be using in your Facebook page, your content, your descriptions on your podcast, all over your marketing when it comes to developing your content. So those kind of things help you with a little bit of copywriting too. If you ever get that brain fart, I do a lot of writing. I know Scotty does a lot of writing too. You get a brain fart and you're like, I don't even know what to say. That can help jumpstart that writer's block. So it's super helpful. So use the SEO to your advantage. Don't make it human. Remember that everybody, when you're writing content or copywriting, remember that this is for human consumption. Don't be robotic. That's like a big no-no. I'm actually writing a book on all the ways that people do social media wrong, to kind of help guide people, because it's a constant thing when people ask me to do a social media audit. It's consistently the same things that come up and up. So I'm like, well, people need to know about this. Anyway, so with that, you want to develop your content around that stuff, but don't be robotic. Just use those keywords and key phrases. And if you have a Facebook page devoted to your podcast, or like Jim will use Macbeth. Have you ever used Macbeth for your? Yeah. So when you're using it, yeah. So if you have a Facebook page devoted to your podcast, your about us is your metadata. If you know what that's a little bit of data. And then the title of your Facebook page is your meta title. That's like your title. And that's what is pulling your SEO on Google. I'm just going to use Google for an example, because only people over 75 use Bing, apparently. So there's that. But so when you, if you've ever Googled, and listen, I'm not even going to ask if you've ever Googled me. I know you've Googled somebody. I know you've Googled an ex. I know you've Googled a weird neighbor. I know you've Googled yourself. And when you do, what is the first thing that comes up? Their LinkedIn page, Facebook, Pinterest, and their arrest record. Okay. So apparently arrest records, every county has got amazing SEO for that, apparently. So with that, think about that. So that in your Facebook page, that about us, the first 88, is it 83, 88 characters is your SEO. That's what drives your SEO when it's searched. So think about that when you're building your Facebook pages for any business with that. So Rhonda, I'm going to Google myself to make sure those arrest records are sealed. Girl, don't forget, I knew you in high school. Anyway.
Can I jump in, Delaina?
Yes, please.
So, all the way back to week 1, when we very first started talking about planning and the reason that you are doing this. Remember, I was talking about direct and indirect income. I mean, if you're doing it like me just for fun, then all of his analytics and stuff are kind of like gravy. It's cool to see, but I just want to talk to these folks. But if you're doing this as a part of your business, or as a business itself, I listen to some podcasters that is their income. They podcast every day and they get money, and that's what they do for a living. Mm-hmm. Then there's other people who have a podcast that supports their business. And one example off the top of my head is Scotty's guy, Brendan, who does a podcast, Bungalower on the Bus, with him and John Bustecker.
Great podcast.
It is a great podcast, but it's not a business in itself. But what it does do is it supports the greater mission of Bungalower, which is the all things downtown Orlando. Ernie's back with his screen again.
With his Tony Robbins picture.
I love that face. That's so good, Ernie. So the point I'm making is, if you're doing this just as a hobby, then this stuff can kind of go off to the side for now. If you're doing it as a way to support your business and to drive traffic to your primary source of business, it becomes more important, obviously, because this is now a channel, right? It's the same thing as advertising and PR and, you know, going on, being interviewed by the newspaper as an subject matter expert. All those things help drive trust to your company, right? And if you're known as a local expert in a certain industry or section of your business, you know, there's a lot of, for example, law firms. I know of 2 or 3 lawyers who do podcasts, not because they're going to make any money at the podcasting, but it makes them helps people think of them as an area expert.
Becoming a thought leader in your field.
Davy J, is that right? Is she the intellectual property attorney in town? I've seen several of her. She does YouTube. She does little info things, 10, 15 minutes long about a particular, like, are you thinking about copywriting something? Here's the pitfalls people fall into and the difference between trademark and copyright. In other words, it's one more area that you can completely control that allows you to be known as a subject matter expert, right? No one else is editing your work. You get to be the complete controller of it. So if it's a way to drive people to your primary business, then you do need to think a little bit more about your marketing. And obviously, if it's the thing you're doing for a living, which is wonderful, if you can find something that enough people want to listen to, then it's all important, right? Because it's your sole source of income. So I think that how important this marketing and analytics is depends on what you're using your podcast for. I think it's important that, you know, some of us just don't need to know it, and others, it's like, if you do it well, it's money in the bank.
I think Polly, wouldn't we like to make money off our podcast? Wouldn't we?
Right?
It'd be nice.
Polly, you're muted. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'm dumb. Oh, Polly was muted. I think she's just like, yeah, I don't want to talk. I'll just whatever she said.
Well, and Delaina, do you want to talk a little bit about, have you done pay-per-click on Google, paid search terms and stuff like that?
For podcasting?
Well, for anything.
Yeah. I did want to kind of cover what to post when you're doing that. I think, let me see if that goes into, no, let me touch on that now, because I do want to get into what you should post, like how to, like what kind of content to post to push your podcast. And we'll get to that in a second, but no, it's very important. So pay-per-click. I never thought about talking about that. What are your thoughts on that, Jim? Because I can.
Several different businesses using. So when I say it, it sounds like I'm saying paperclip, but
I know, right?
I'm not.
PPC. Has any raise your hand if you're familiar with PPC?
Yeah. Okay,
PPC?
good. We
Okay,
got
good.
a couple
Yep.
folks who've done it.
Yeah.
Essentially, you bid on keywords. So for those of you who haven't done it before, if I pay for Google pay-per-click right here in Orlando for my headshot business. So when someone searches for a headshot photographer Orlando, we are bidding on that search term. And we're not always going to win it. It could be 25 cents a click. It could be 50 cents a click. It could be varying depending on where you set your caps. But essentially, every time someone searches, there's a mini auction that happens really, really fast. And you're ranked based on how much you say you want to pay for each one of those clicks. What's a lead worth to you, essentially? And every month we spend, $100, $150. And those people come to our website and see us because they searched for headshot photographer Orlando or some variant on that. I wouldn't do it for Finding My Quiet Place, which is my podcast, simply because it's not generating any income for me. But if I was doing a podcast about headshot photography and I wanted people to come to it because it would get them to trust me as their headshot photographer, I might be interested in driving some traffic to that website. So you set up your Google Analytics. If you want to go check it out for yourself, it's adwords.com, ADWORDS. And that's Google's sort of bid management process. AdWords is a great place to start. And you can bid as low as a dime a click, all the way up to $10 if you want to. The price that you're going to pay for your click depends on how many other people are also bidding on that term, just like any auction.
Mhm.
And the more traffic there is around a particular search term, generally the more folks there are going to be bidding on that term because someone's found a way to monetize it.
Mhm.
It'll always say sponsored. So if you guys go right now and Google headshot photographer Orlando, you'll see it. You'll see Macbeth show up. Please don't click on it unless you need a headshot. Otherwise, it's
Exactly. Because he's going to have to pay for it.
But an impression doesn't cost you anything. So if you just see it on the screen as one of your choices and you scroll right past it, that didn't cost me anything. But once you click on it, then whatever I'm bidding on that term gets charged.
We could do a whole show on it because there's
Yeah.
display ads and then there's search ads and then there's all kinds of, and when it comes to like PPC on, especially if it's like your business, there's a little hack that I use on my clients and it's just so shady, but it's fine. It's fine. I have an attorney she'll be interviewed for podcasts,
right.
And we embed that podcast into her website. So her website's already getting a ton of traffic. So I just set up a goal conversion or of course I can't think of it. Y'all help me out with the PPC. The thing below it. A what?
A widget?
No, it's like when you search and then it's got the different, you can have you can switch them in out, like a promotion, you can switch them in and out. I will add the promotion because it's cheaper. It's a cheaper conversion. So I'll add that podcast to it because I've already spent $1 billion on investing in her SEO on her website. So I use her website to build traffic to that instead of paying for the PPC on that end of it. So you can do that as well. So if you've got great SEO, and you've got this wonderful, beautifully built website, don't be afraid of that either. And don't be afraid of Squarespace. Don't be afraid of those things. I will never, ever, ever recommend anybody using Wix. But Squarespace is a fantastic tool to use if you're not a web developer and WordPress is not something that you want to invest the time in learning. WordPress is free, but it is a lot of time that you have to invest in actually learning how to use it. People say WordPress is so easy. Y'all, it ain't easy. I don't know what crack they smoke to tell me that it's not. I've been using WordPress for 15 years and I can hold my own somewhat, but no. So Squarespace is fantastic. And they've really done in the past 5 years, they've really built up how they invest in their SEO to help your website to make it easier on you. And there's definitely different hacks into Squarespace that you can build as well, but don't let that scare you. And don't let other web developers say you have to have a WordPress account to do PPC. You don't listen to them because Jim does very well. I have so many clients on Squarespace and they do very well on PPC. So don't let that scare you.
Agreed.
That's that. I know I went off into, a different pasture there for a second.
I you that we use Squarespace. We have for 5 years now on the Macbeth website, and I'm really happy with the way it looks. And it also provides Squarespace actually has its own analytics built in. So in addition to your Google Analytics or whatever else you're driving traffic to your site, there's also Squarespace has it built in. So it's
easy to read because if you ever open up AdWords or if you ever open up your Google Analytics for the first time, you're going to literally think that you're going to start to learn how to land a spaceship. It's difficult. It is. I'm not going to lie. You start messing around, watch a few YouTube videos on it. It's pretty easy to get the hang of. And of course they update it consistently and you're like, shit, where did referral source go? Those kind of things. They update it. And Google did just do on what was it, March? Was it March Google or was it March? They just did a whole new SEO update, a new update. Google did. They just dropped this whole big new thing. Am I the only one that's gets a hiney tingle about that stuff?
Everyone has to go back to school to learn how to use it.
It's crazy. Well, they changed it because of the way people are searching now and what they're searching for. So they had to do a major overhaul on all of that. So, because we're searching coronavirus and, political stuff and all that. So that's why they changed that. But I know I went off on a tangent on that. But if you have the opportunity to invest in a little bit of PPC, if you're going to do that, it's very easy. You'll probably get something in the mail and it'll say, here's $500 to invest into Google ads. Have somebody reach out to me or anybody that kind of understands Google words because you'll spend that $500 in about 16 seconds. I can guarantee you if you don't have it set right. And you really kind of need to figure out it's a whatever. But don't be afraid of Facebook ads either. Facebook ads push to Instagram too. So you've got Facebook and Instagram, and you don't have to have a page. You don't have to have a page to do that. You can just set up a business manager or ad account under your personal Facebook page, and you can push an ad for anything. So don't be afraid of that either. Spend a few dollars, and you can kind of gauge, if you're spending $5 and you're pushing that for about a week, you can kind of gauge your audience. That helps you build those customer avatars and really define your audience. To, kind of grow it. And then of course, build the kind of content that you think they want to hear. So don't be afraid of that either. And they're a little bit easier to use, Facebook and Instagram ads. So don't be afraid of it. So
if I can, in the last few minutes of our last episode here, I'd love to know if anyone has any questions about anything we've talked about since day one. If there's anything that from gear to promotion to editing that you'd like to know a little more about, or if there's anything about this show we've done here that we could have improved on, or that wasn't clear that we should probably take our time a little more on, or anybody have any sort of feelings about how it all went? You don't have to, but
I'm going to go into what to actually post. So you kind of have that too. So if you want to think about your question, or if you want to jump in now, I'm going to go over like what to post, because we talked about the strategy behind it, the 5 parts of your strategy. We talked about measuring that, and now we're going to talk about what the post is. Sorry, Jim, I went off and I went rogue on you, and I squirreled it, and obviously I needed Ritalin today. It's fine. It's all going to be fine. Okay. So what to post. So you've got everything completed. And then this part goes into your content development that I kind of talked about. This is the content that you're going to push out to promote your podcast. Wow. I really talk with my hands. So of course, the first and foremost thing is the actual podcast. You're going to push that out. And as Jim's shown you in another episode, and then today, those different websites can push that content out for you to all those pieces and parts. So you want to definitely get the actual podcast going. The second one is don't be afraid to do sound bites to gain a little bit more traction. And this could be a precursor up into, actually releasing the podcast, and after as well. That's very helpful. Just a little soundbite. And you can even have a graphic with it looks like a soundbite with a little bit of it playing. There's really cool things you can do to market that with just a soundbite. The third is graphics. I think I've mentioned that before. You can pull a quote from those graphics and use those. And those can be, just random from any podcast, just to keep your content moving and to stay consistent with social media. If your podcast comes out every 2 weeks, you don't want to just push it then. You want to keep things rolling and stay consistent so that your followers see that you're relevant and that you're, staying on top of things. So there's that. The fourth, video, if you have some. If you, I know, do you guys follow Bert Kreischer? Am I the only weirdo? Am I the only sicko out here that follows Bert? Yeah, Bert Kreischer. So he videotapes his podcasts as well. I think Joe Rogan does too. You guys are really learning a lot about me. But they videotape it too. So if you happen to get a little video and you're comfortable with it, and the person you're interviewing is comfortable, grab that video and use that too. Use those clips. I know Gary Vaynerchuk does a lot of that as well. The fifth is pictures. So of the interview time that you have together. Again, like I mentioned, Jim's podcast is visual anyway, because he has that visual component of that storytelling part, which is amazing and definitely is a differentiator for his podcast. But any kind of pictures with you guys talking, chatting, having lunch or dinner or drinks after, same concept. Use those. You're building your asset library, because not just for this podcast, but in 6 months, you might want to go back and post it again, or you might want to, something relevant comes into current events. You might want to use that. Oh, that podcast is really relevant to what we're dealing with right now. I should post that. Same concept. And again, if it worked, when we go back to analytics, and remember I talked about the downloads, and I talked about if you, how many times it's been downloaded and tells about your audience. And if it's relevant, that's that number that you're looking at to say, my followers really liked this kind of content. I need to put more content out like this. But again, don't be afraid to recycle your content. Don't be afraid to do that. Recycling is a good thing. Don't let anybody ever tell you that it's not. I don't mean post it every week, but definitely if it worked for you and you see your numbers rising and you're watching that, then definitely use it again. So that's for all that kind of.
Delaina, let me just echo that. Repurposing your content. For some reason, I have this feeling like once I've posted something, everyone in the world that's ever going to want to see it has seen it. And
Yeah, so that's a lot of people think that. So this is a rule of thumb: 20% of 20% of the people see 20% of your content. So don't be afraid to recycle it. And even if they do see it again, that's brand awareness. So that's kind of like if especially on Instagram and the way the algorithm works for that, of course, it's different on Facebook, it's different on Twitter, it's different on Pinterest, it's different everywhere. So consider that too, your audience. So of course on Pinterest, if any of you are familiar with using Pinterest, any Pinterest users?
not really.
Oh, yep. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Oh, look at that. Okay. It's not just for mommy bloggers and Instant Pot users anymore. It really is it's a huge search engine. It's the 4th largest search engine that we use. So don't be afraid of that. But with Pinterest, you have to post 4 times a day. So, a services like Tailwind can make that content keep recycling. And that's so it gets the SEO that it needs through Pinterest. That's a whole nother obviously story in itself. So yeah, but recycling or repurposing your content, and you can repurpose it in different ways. It could be the same podcast, but it could be something different and you spin it a little bit differently.
Mhm.
I have a family law attorney that when we talk about child support, one specific topic, I've got to change the wording and be really creative with my copywriting to get that blog post read again, just with the graphics that I use, and drive them to that page again. So just think of that too. If you've got one piece of content, you can use all these different ways to do it. Don't be afraid to twist things around to get people there, because that message might be different for the message is different for every platform. That's another clue too. Every social media platform, the voice is different and the audience is different for your particular followers. So don't be afraid to change things up a little bit and see how it works. And again, if you're repurposing content and you used it this way and then you used it this way, any of you that know that about traditional marketing, that's called A/B testing. So you're actually seeing which works with your followers. Super helpful when it comes to building your content in the future. So that's helpful. I think I said that. So also too, the 6th one you want to consider is YouTube, putting it on YouTube. You can put if you videotape the whole thing, put it on YouTube. Even if you didn't, you can have just a static graphic with the lines, the voice lines going on. Don't be afraid of it. I'm not saying that's your first option, but just don't be afraid of it. If you already have a YouTube channel or your company has a YouTube channel and you want to build that up, don't be afraid of that either. Because again, YouTube is a search engine. It is a large search engine. It's the 2nd largest search engine that we have. So in order is Google, it's YouTube, Facebook, and Pinterest. Those are the largest search engines that we use. Keep that in mind when you're building your content up. So don't be afraid of YouTube, because keywords and descriptions, they help with SEO just like they do on your podcast, just like they do on every social platform and for your website. Super helpful. Also don't be afraid to add your transcript to your blog post. So if you make a blog post about it and you have it up on your website, like I was mentioning with my attorney, I also get the transcript, and I can mess with the SEO with that as well. So if those of you that are familiar with how you can change things around on your keywords and all that stuff in the pictures, it's really, really helpful too. It drives a lot of traffic that way.
Delaina,
Yes.
do you automatically transcribe it using a speech to text software, or does someone actually transcribe word for
So
word?
this is my hack for that. It's called an SRT file, and I don't like creating SRT files. I have a background in video and film production. So I've learned how to write scripts with the timing. It's a real pain in the ass, I'm not going to lie. And I don't want to buy the software to do it. So you upload it to YouTube, and you can put it on private so nobody sees it if you don't want to do that. If you don't want to actually put your podcast up there, and you can, once it's posted, private, public, or just for a certain link, you can download the SRT file from it. And so that gives you that SRT file and the transcript, and you can just kind of redo it a little bit. So
you're using YouTube's speech to text.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then snag in the text.
Mm-hmm. And Facebook doesn't do that yet. I'm surprised they don't. They haven't yet that I know of, because now that they've added captions to everything for you, or the ability to do captions without being paid. If you've ever done a paid video before, you used to be able to, you could do the captions, but you only could do it if it was a paid ad. But now they do it with any video. So, oh, look at that. Otter.ai has a free option. Thank you, Ernie. Thank you very much. That's awesome. We need to write that down.
Is it pretty reliable, Ernie? The quality of the
translation is good. It's fast, and you can do highlights in real time, but it does not do the SRT by time code as accurately as you might want for scripting. but
Mhm.
it does have like approximate times, time
Yeah.
code. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Good
I
to
like
know.
it. Is it a free service, Ernie?
Yeah, for single users it's free and you could get the license for a little more. I found out about it because Zoom just did an integration with them, and so Zoom will be
Ooh,
using them, I think, moving forward.
that's sweet. That's awesome. Thank you.
Right. There's I was on a Google Hangout, Google Live, whatever it was, this morning, and they have the ability to just turn on subtitles while you're in the call, and it's live. It's listening and posting the things you're saying within a few seconds, which is kind of scary.
Hmm.
And it's about as accurate as the TV
It's crazy.
in the
Yeah,
bar with the sportscaster.
that's funny. Okay, so you've got what to post, right? Again, these are all in the notes. Now, when to post. That's like a big question I get. When do I post? What time of day? What's the best time? Well, right now, guys, it's a free for all. You'll start to see, well, you should probably, if you're looking at your analytics, you'll start to see now kind of when to post, because we're starting to kind of get into a rhythm here. But when it comes to your actual podcast and you want to market that, these are my suggestions. You want to do 1 week before, 72 hours before, 24 hours, day of. Those are the 4 ways that I suggest doing it. I was like, God, that's a whole lot. But remember, 20% of the people see 20% of your content. So that's, go by that, and you won't feel so afraid. And again, you can use the pull graphics, the sound bites, the video, the pictures. So you're not just pushing the same thing. So
Right.
consider that as well. So, and then when we talked about recycle content, here's how some good ideas to recycle it. You want to do it on the anniversary of it coming out. That's a really good one. When the content may be relevant in current events. If the person that you interviewed, or if it's something that if you're just yourself, if you've won some kind of award, or you are being noticed for something, or there's, it's your 10 minutes of fame, that's a good time to do it. So that's also a great way to get more reach for that. National days. So if you are a donut maker and National Donut Day is out, then you should probably post a podcast about a donut, something that has to do with donuts. So, or if you had a donut maker on your podcast, consider that as well. So that's, little tips and tricks.
I'm
But
just saying, your 2 examples so far have been best tasting cookies and now donuts. You're killing me.
I know.
Are you hungry,
It's
Delaina?
sorry. Well, do you want me to talk about Botox? Because that's, I have a client that I do that's a med spa, and that one. But see, the guys will be like, I don't know that, but we all
Just
eat
making me
cookies.
hungry. That's all. I'm hungry.
Yeah, you're right. I'm making you very hungry. I apologize.
I have an additional, can I throw one in?
Yes.
If you've interviewed people, I've noticed Facebook lets me know when their birthday is. And if I throw a little note up and say, hey, Phil Hoffman's birthday today, and
Yes.
I interviewed last year, Phil Hoffman now suddenly has a ton of traffic on his page because everyone's there wishing him a happy birthday. And so your subversive sort of content gets a little bit into their radar because they know him. Obviously, they know him because they're saying happy birthday.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that idea. That's
My
fantastic.
analytics that day.
I love it.
Because of that.
And follow up also 2 weeks later after your podcast. Because the reason you do that is to get reviews, because you get noticed more on iTunes and places like that when the more reviews you have. So, and don't be afraid to ask for reviews. So, and I know we're coming up on 3:00. So before we kind of dive into questions, I just want to talk about 4 other key takeaways for marketing your podcast. The first one is talk to people who would like to sponsor, something that you might think to, paid or unpaid in the beginning. So, I've been talking to people because, like I mentioned a little bit, Polly and I are working on a project, a podcast project, and I want to talk to people friends of mine that have businesses, and we can plug it in there, and we can kind of get people will start to notice that we do have ads. Maybe they're paid. Maybe you don't know if they're paid or if they're not, but that kind of gives that option. Hey, can I look like I'm sponsoring your event? And that helps them too. And I can guarantee you they're going to say yes. I already have 3 yeses, so whatever. And I always don't take no for an answer until I get a yes. I'm one of those people. So, and then the second one is be a guest on someone else's podcast. That's a great way to spread your podcast. This is a really cool one. The third one is run contests. Some kind of like giveaway. You can give away free ad space. So that's a good way to run a contest where there's no money necessarily out of your pocket if you think about it. So and don't forget to, if you don't already know this, you are not allowed to run contests on Facebook, just on Instagram. So Facebook contests, big no-no. Instagram, all day long. So, and we've talked about too, Jim, conversations we had of link contests.
Where you do mutual links or
Yeah. You probably, if you follow Instagram influencers like I do, because I buy shoes and clothing on Instagram, because that's how I am. Because I don't like really to go shopping. I mean, and we can't kind of anyway, and we don't want to. But anywho, they'll say, "Oh, follow these 5 people, and you're entered in to win a Peloton bike or whatever." So, and no, I didn't win the Peloton bike that way, but it would be cool because my husband would be very happy about that. So, because good God, this thing's expensive. And then the fourth, like little sneaky way, not sneaky way, is drop the link to your podcast in your email signature. So if you run your own business, it's a great way to spread that word. I mean, if you work for a company and then, you have a podcast, you might want to ask, I don't know. I don't know if that's like a PC thing to do, but there's that option as well. So this is kind of the 4 key takeaways. And I know I talk really fast. I probably should have told you that in the beginning. So with that, like Jim mentioned before, questions, anyone so far? Or are you going to take it in like, God, this girl talks so fast. It's got to take me 3 days to figure it out.
I have a question, and we might have addressed this on one of the other podcasts.
Well, I'll make fun of you later. It's fine.
That's awesome. But do you prefer to give the questions ahead of time to the people that you're interviewing so they have an opportunity to kind of reflect or review prior to doing the taping?
I'll let Jim answer this because he did talk about that in a previous episode.
Yeah. That question has come up before, and I say yes. You can't over prepare your subject. Tell them everything that you want to cover, but don't talk about it with that person before the machine is rolling. I've found that if we have small talk and we start getting onto the subject matter that we're going to talk about in the podcast, I try to stop them right away because it's never as fresh the second time around. So yeah, tell them what you're going to talk about, but don't actually let them talk. Is my caveat to that.
Anyone else? You're just so blown away. That's what it is.
I hope it's been comprehensive and yeah, right. I hope it's been at least informative enough to give you the tips you need to go do the remaining research on your own. This has been a very broad level thing. I want to thank Lawrence, who is there in my screen, for his expertise on the week we talked about gear. He's the guy. If you've decided you want to do a podcast and you live in Orlando and you don't want to do all the other technical stuff, just get in touch with Lawrence. I can put you in touch if you want. He'll record you. He'll do all the editing. And he'll create it for you. So for a fee, of course, but he's the guy to talk to. Absolutely.
Nominal fee.
Audio engineer.
And Jim gets my marketing, charges me marketing.
I'll do your headshot when you need it.
You do not want to shoot this head. No.
I appreciate everyone hanging with us for 4 weeks. I think Ernie hasn't missed a week, and a couple of others of you guys have been here all the time. So I hope you felt it was useful, good value for money.
Oh yeah, you both done a great job.
Thank you both. Yep.
Thank you. And we'll send this out so you'll have the, just like we've done in the past. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate. I love when people pick my brain about social media or any kind of digital marketing question. By all means, reach out anytime. You have my email address. And I've loved doing this for you guys. And I love doing stuff with Jim. So
yeah, this has been a whole lot of fun and a chance to kind of figure out what we don't know. I've done a lot of research before each episode to make sure I know what I'm talking about. And I've learned a ton in the process of doing this too. So I really appreciate you guys donating an hour a week for 4 weeks. That's very kind of you.
No, it was very useful. Thanks a lot.
I'm glad. And please do me a favor. If and when, I hope it's when you create your first podcast based on the things you've learned here, please send me a link to it. I'd love to listen to what you guys create. I'm very excited to hear how this turns into something tangible. So
now me and Polly's, you gonna hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Share with all of us, right?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Thanks about
what is it going to be about?
So Michelle, I think you already know, I have a Facebook page. It's called Mess Talk. So it's Moms Exploring Serious Shit. So Polly is, although she's quiet here, she's quite a humorous lady, and I tend to do.
Sober right now, so I'm not as nearly as funny.
You're what?
I'm just sober, so I'm not nearly as funny.
That's the problem.
Add alcohol, instant humor. So Polly and I are going to create the podcast behind that to reach more ears. I just don't really, I have so many Facebook pages that I have to keep up with work that I just don't want to touch another Facebook page or another website. But podcasting is like super fun, and I don't get to do that as much as I'd like. So again, just having another humorous mom talk about the messiness of motherhood and keeping it real, because if there's any tiny inclination, as some of you who don't know me, it's going to be a very real podcast. So
Yeah. Awesome. Look forward to it.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
I want to hear it when it comes out, and the rest of you the same. If anybody
Yes.
here makes something new, I'd love to listen. Scotty's had a lot of experience because he's been a guest host on Bungalow on the Bus many times now, so he's just
True. I mean, we've also started a podcast called Shelf Centered for the library, and we just recorded our 7th episode.
oh great.
We did it during this time period because we thought there was a need to get information out too. So it's been through Zoom, and it's been a really interesting experience.
Is it an interview format?
We have there'll be just some chatting that gives updates. We have a section called Staff Picks, which are staff tells us about books or other materials that they recommend. And then we have interviews, and some of those are with staff. Some of those have been with authors, and we're, so anything that's kind of relevant to the library and,
Nice.
and promoting. So
Looking forward to hearing it.
Yep.
Well, thank you very
Awesome.
much, everybody. Please keep in touch. Shoot your questions to me, whether it's about tech or about process or about planning or about anything. And if I have anything intelligent to say, I will try to help. So.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you both.
Thank you, everybody.
Fantastic. Thank you.
thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Keep in touch.
Bye.
Bye-bye.